So, when you hear the name The Art of War, what comes to mind? I bet it's epic battles, clashing swords, and, bloodshed. But what if I told you the world's most famous book on warfare is actually about winning without ever fighting? Let's get into the surprisingly peaceful core of this ancient masterpiece.
Right from the get-go, Sun Tzu makes one thing crystal clear. This is not a game. War is the most serious, high-stakes undertaking a state can possibly face. We're talking absolute survival or total destruction. And that gravity, that weight, it informs every single piece of advice that follows.
So how does a guy like Sun Tzu prove his methods actually work? Well, the story that basically cemented his reputation is, let's just say it's unconventional. It's a demonstration that created this legend of a ruthless, brutally effective commander.
Okay, so get this. King Halu of Wu, he's read Sun Tzu's 13 chapters, and he's totally intrigued. He asks him, hey, can your theories be tested on women? Sun Tzu, without missing a beat, says, yep. And just like that, 180 women were brought out from the palace for a little military drill.
So Sun Tzu splits them into two companies and even appoints the king's two favorite concubines as their leaders. He explains the commands, gets everything set up, then he gives the order, right turn, and the response? Laughter. Just complete giggling chaos.
And this is where you see Sun Tzu's, unique logic really kick in. At first, he actually takes the blame himself. He patiently explains the commands all over again. But when he gives the order a second time and the women just burst into laughter again, he lays down a critical principle. If the orders are clear, the fault isn't with the general anymore. It's with the officers. And then comes the moment that just floors everybody. He orders the execution of the two leaders. The king, who's watching all this from a pavilion, freaks out and sends a message, begging him to spare his favorites. But Sun Tzu's response is ice cold. He says that as the appointed general, there are some commands from the king he cannot accept. And the execution, it goes ahead.
So with new leaders in place, Sun Tzu gives the command again. This time, absolute, silent precision. The women could turn, march, kneel, you name it, without a single mistake. He proved his point in the most brutal way imaginable. Discipline is everything. And just like that, the myth of the merciless strategist was born.
But here's the thing about that story. It creates this myth that totally misses the real point of his philosophy. Sun Tzu wasn't some bloodthirsty warmonger. He was a stone-cold pragmatist. He understood the absolutely devastating real-world costs of conflict, and that understanding is the foundation for his entire strategy. 1,000 ounces of silver. Just let that sink in for a second. According to Sun Tzu, that's what it costs every single day just to keep an army of 100,000 men in the field. Every day, a massive fortune is spent not on building things, but on the potential for pure destruction. That number makes the whole idea of the cost of war brutally real. And look, that financial hit, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The longer a war drags on, the worse everything gets. Your weapons get dull, morale just plummets, your soldiers are exhausted, and your treasury is empty. And all this creates a huge vulnerability. Because while you're bogged down in a fight, you can bet your rivals are watching, just waiting for a chance to strike.
This right here, this might be one of the most important lines in the entire book. It's a definitive, absolute statement. Sun Tzu is saying there are simply no winners in a long war. Even the so-called victor is left weakened, broke, and vulnerable. The takeaway is crucial. A long, drawn-out fight is always a strategic failure.
Okay, so this brings us to the absolute heart of his whole philosophy. If actually waging war is so ruinously expensive and destructive, then the entire goal must be to get what you want through other means.
And that's the big question, right? The question that really unlocks the art of war. If fighting to a win still leads to ruin, how on earth can a state actually come out on top and secure its interests? The answer is a complete game changer.
And there it is. That's the mic drop moment. The absolute pinnacle of skill. The highest form of victory you can possibly achieve is to make your enemy give up without a single battle ever taking place. It's about winning before the fighting even has a chance to start. This is the idea that transforms the art of war from a simple battle manual into a guide for grand strategy.
So Sun Tzu basically lays out a scorecard for war. On one side, you have the worst possible moves. Laying siege to cities for months, shattering a country into pieces. These are total failures. But on the other side, you have the best policies. Taking a country completely intact, capturing an entire army without destroying it. The mark of a true master isn't destruction, it's preservation.
Okay, so how do you actually pull this off? How do you win without fighting? Well, it all starts with one thing: knowledge. The battle, he says, is won or lost in the planning stages, through calculation, long before the armies ever even see each other.
Sun Tzu says that before you even think about conflict, you got to run through this checklist of 5 factors for both yourself and your enemy. Do the people actually believe in their leader? What's the weather going to be like? What's the terrain? How good is the opposing general? How disciplined are their troops? This isn't about counting spears and swords. It's a deep, holistic analysis of the entire situation.
This is probably the most famous quote from the book, and for good reason. It perfectly sums up the principle. Having complete knowledge removes fear and uncertainty. When you truly understand your own strengths and weaknesses, and you understand your opponents just as well, victory can basically be engineered. The battle itself almost becomes a formality.
All right, so once you've done your homework and you have that knowledge, what's next? Well, now you use it to play with your enemy's mind. The goal is to get them to defeat themselves through their own bad judgment.
The core idea here is simple: project the complete opposite of what's true. Like Sun Tzu wrote, when you are perfectly able to attack, you have to seem completely unable. When you're strong, you have to appear weak. You're basically creating a false reality for your opponent to live in.
And then you use that against them. You play on their ego. If you pretend to be weak, your opponent will likely grow arrogant and overconfident. And that arrogance, it leads to carelessness. And a careless enemy will make fatal mistakes, falling right into whatever trap you've laid.
And all this deception, it all leads to one thing: the element of surprise. The ultimate goal is to show up where you are least expected, to strike where the enemy is most vulnerable. That is how you achieve a quick, decisive victory with the absolute minimum cost.
So, you gotta ask, right? Why are we still talking about a military text that's 2,500 years old? It's because its lessons aren't just about war. They're fundamental truths about strategy, about conflict, and about human nature itself.
I mean, think about it. These are universal principles. It doesn't matter if you're in a boardroom, in a tough negotiation, or just trying to navigate a personal challenge. These ideas always hold true. Thinking strategically, preparing like crazy, understanding psychology, and always aiming for the most efficient, elegant solution, that's the timeless wisdom of Sun Tzu.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. A question for you, actually. Sun Tzu teaches us that true mastery isn't about overpowering your obstacles, it's about outthinking them. So what's a challenge you're facing right now that could be solved not with force, but with a better, smarter strategy?